Hi, it's me. That little voice inside your head. You spent all year taking care of business. Let Office Depot Office Max take care of you. There's this new HP Pavilion laptop with 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor. Save $200. Now just $449. Look at it. It's only $449 at Office Depot Office Max. Go ahead. You deserve it.
Taking care of business.
Offer ends 11/11. Limit 1.
Hello and welcome to episode 74 of Cavalytics. Cavalytics is a show about the NBA's Cleveland Cavaliers with a focus on statistical analysis. I am Keith Carter, a lifelong Cleveland sports fan with the pessimism that often comes with that. And oh boy, I'm like a pig in mud with the way the Cavs are playing right now. My co-host is Mike Savagno, an NBA advanced stats guru, a writer for Fear the Sword, and from what I can tell, a wizard at juggling his final year of law school with a 50 NBA tweets per day mandate. Mike, this is fine, right?
If you're speaking in memes.
Yeah, envisioning the dog with the burning house around him saying everything's great. They almost pulled it out. If Channing Frye could have just made that three, they would have had a wonderful comeback victory against the worst team in the NBA at home.
Yeah, there was finally, I guess, some effort in the fourth quarter. LeBron actually looked kind of exhausted at the end.
He did. He had his hands on his knees and stuff. I noticed that as well.
I don't know. I guess that's what you get for having to play at 110% in one quarter after playing for 3 quarters with about 10% effort. So it was certainly a game to watch.
LeBron played 40 minutes, 35 seconds again tonight. Do you think he will lead the NBA in minutes per game this year?
If he plays the bulk of his minutes like he did tonight, I could see him doing that. I don't even know how you count the first probably 30 minutes of that, seeing that he was probably giving as much effort as I was giving from my couch. But
yeah, I don't think he got into the restricted area in the first quarter.
No, it didn't look like he started trying until they brought Channing Frye in the third quarter. And then all of a sudden he drove to the basket a couple times and it was like, whoa, where was that guy?
Yeah. It's sort of surprising how dominant he is when he tries. And I'm trying to figure out if, we have like a sample size thing, but he finished today with 26 points, 13 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks, a steal. He did have 6 turnovers, but he was 10 of 17 from the field. He had 26 points on 17 shots. That's pretty good for one quarter assing it.
The whole thing about it is that, the way that the team is set up now, and whatever Kevin Love was dealing with today, I guess they said an illness, but it seemed like he was just quite bad.
He was sick of his own play.
Or sick of the referees, one of the two. But you really can't survive games. Obviously it's the Hawks, so they were able to come back, but you really can't survive games where Love plays poorly and LeBron kind of doesn't play at all. There's just not enough downstream for you to be carried. Kyle Korver continued, probably playing like the second best player on the team so far, with his 5 of 11 from 3, and Dwayne Wade had a good first half. So, there were some signs, but for the most part, when Love is going to give you that effort and LeBron is going to kind of be in chill mode, as he says, then it's going to be hard to beat teams that are better than the Hawks.
Yeah. And apparently it's going to be hard to beat teams that are the Hawks. Look, the Cavs only lost by 2, but they outscored the Hawks by 11 in the fourth quarter. And they were, really getting blown out of the gym for most of the game.
They made 7 threes in the fourth quarter alone, which was kind of...
Yeah. They couldn't hit water if they fell into it and for the first 3 quarters. And then Kyle Korver had a late flourish. Korver still finished, I'm going to say only here, which is a little unfair, but 5 of 11 from 3.
Yeah, the thing is that, when it takes 21 points off of 3-pointers in a one quarter alone to try to mount a comeback, it's not going to be the best game for your team. And then on top of it, when your starting point guard is a minus 27 in a game that you lose by 2 points, that's a lot to overcome.
Yeah, I guess we should talk about Derrick Rose versus Dwayne Wade. I mean, this merry-go-round of starting lineups that the Cavs have deployed so far is weird. But I guess, well, I don't know. Do you think the Cavs should try to move Wade into the starting lineup?
Oh, man. No, I don't. I mean, it's hard to say because I feel like he does well against bench units, but he played really poorly against starting lineups at the beginning of the year. And maybe that was because he was next to Rose. But I feel like him actually playing in that bench unit with Kevin Love has kind of been fairly decent. I mean, it's not been incredibly horrible, and you're kind of booing some of the minutes that LeBron is sitting out. And so I think that enough. I mean, unless you were going to play Wade for a couple minutes and then pull him and then bring him back, I feel like that alone is enough to justify him coming off the bench, because I do think that second unit has been better than I expected.
Yeah, I mean, the Cavs bench scored 64 points tonight. Wade was, I'm going to read his box score just because I didn't realize it was this good. He had 25 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 turnover. He only took 19 shots, so 25 points on 19 shots, and he was plus 23.
And especially with that second unit, he actually has a fairly high assist percentage. If you compare him and, say, Derrick Rose, you see a large gulf in there. I think Derrick Rose came into today's game, he had a 9.9 assist percentage, whereas Wade had a 29.2 assist percentage. And so Wade actually, I think, has been distributing the ball maybe better than we expected going into the year.
Yeah, well, and on the other side of the teeter-totter there is Derrick Rose has been much worse than expected. So Rose, I saw a few tweets about it today. So Rose his assist percentage so far this season is like 10%, and I think for his career he's around 30%.
Briefly, in the 22 minutes that Wade and Love have played together without LeBron, they have a 1.1 net rating. So I mean, it's not great, but when LeBron's off the floor, having a positive net rating is better than certainly happened last year.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, look, considering I think the Cavs have been outscored by something like 60 points so far this season, anything that's positive is impressive. Yeah. I mean, the Cavs are 4-6 during the easiest part of their schedule. It's frustrating. Okay, so what about J.R. Smith and Kyle Korver?
Oh, no. I mean, it looks like J.R. has just totally lost his confidence. I don't really know what's going on. I mean, on that, second to last possession?
You want to recap? Yeah, go for it.
Essentially,
you want to recap what happened
the Cavs created about, 2 or 3 wide-open threes. J.R. takes one dribble to his right and then passes it up to Jeff Green, also has a wide-open 3. Jeff Green passes it off to Kyle Korver, who's obviously covered, and then Korver ends up hitting Wade in the corner, and Wade has a wide open 3, but of course that doesn't go in. So I mean, they created a bunch of potentially good looks, and you end up with a Dwayne Wade corner 3, and Wade hasn't made a corner 3 all season. So the result there is probably predictable.
Yeah. Yeah, that end sequence was hard to watch. I mean, look, the Cavs are not playing great right now. One wonders what their sort of true talent level with their current way of playing is. I don't think they're as bad as they've looked. I think, look, their defense is atrocious, but I think they've been going through some unsustainably bad luck in terms of opponents shooting. It's hard to know, like, if the opponents are shooting really well because the defense is bad, or if there's some unsustainable bad luck. I think it's a combination of both. But yeah, maybe the Cavs can sort of limp along, and, get to February and be like, 7 games above 500 or something. And that'll,
I think that,
I don't know.
It's both in the sense that they give up a lot of wide open looks, and then teams get hot and comfortable. And so then when the looks become contested, the guys are already, kind of feeling themselves a little bit. And so they're just more likely to make those shots, I feel like. I mean, it comes from you see one or two go down and you're a decent shooter, and all of a sudden the defense is going to bother you less.
Yeah. This is one of these things that's really nice about baseball that just isn't the same in basketball. So in baseball, all the samples are basically independent. You have the pitcher and the hitter, and there are just so few external factors. There's some momentum. Like, I think there's been some research to show that, like, if there have been a couple hits in a row, another hit is slightly more likely. But that might just be because the pitcher's bad. In basketball, there's 9 other guys on the court, and there's so much context, momentum. Even though these guys are like professionals, momentum still seems to play like a huge part in the NBA game. And that's part of what makes it so much fun to watch. But yeah, it's just hard to know if the Cavs are going through something that is unusually unlucky, or if they're making their own bad luck. And there's obviously a positive feedback loop of negativity there that's making things worse. But it's hard to know like how to read this.
That the pick and roll defense with Rose and Love in the starting lineup has just been so bad that it creates looks for basically absolutely everyone. And just, I don't know. I mean, you put Kevin Love and Derrick Rose in the pick and roll, and you're almost guaranteed to get a good shot as the opposing team.
Has Love always been this bad? I mean, so there's, been some stuff by Zach Lowe and Shane Young and, showing clips of the Cavs being bad on defense, which basically every defensive possession. But yeah, you'll see, Love will sag on the pick and roll, and then, Rose will die into the screen. And then, there's just, like they could do, the offense could do whatever they want. Like the ball handler can take a wide open shot. He can drive past. He can pass to the roll man. And they're not taking away. Yeah, you tweeted this today. Like they're not taking away anything on that.
Like I saw some encouraging signs from him out of the pick and roll, and I thought that he was getting higher. And the Cavs were definitely better last year guarding the pick and roll than they are now. And it just seems now like he's too low. So he, like you said, he's not taking away the ball handler at all, but he's also too low to the point where the ball handler has the pocket pass to the roll man every single time. So I don't really know what his goal is, but instead of taking away one thing, which would at least be somewhat helpful, he's managed to take away nothing.
Yeah. To my eye, I am not as good at sort of seeing these things in real time. I'm too emotional, and I'm just not experienced enough, like watching X's and O's in basketball. But to my eye, Love is significantly worse than he was last year. Do you think it's effort? Is it that the personnel around him is making it so that his flaws are more exposed? Is it, maybe my eye is wrong?
I don't really know, because obviously the Cavs aren't going from having
worse.
some defensive whiz point guard to having a terrible one. But I don't know if it's just because he's being asked to play center. Obviously he's been asked to do it before, but in shorter stretches, or maybe not with the same terminology, and whether or not that's gotten him a bit upset or something. His body language doesn't look great, but whatever it is, I mean, maybe it's just that he's been banging more with guys on the glass or something, and he's just too tired, or he's not in great shape. But clearly something's going wrong, because he, like you said, he's looked pretty bad.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, look, the Cavs have no choice but to hope that he gets better. Like, they're not going to bench him. The only alternative would be to trade him, but I like, there's been a lot of like trade Kevin Love. People are increasingly starting to rumble about that. I just don't think they're going to be able to get back.
I mean, before you go there, I think you have to exhaust other options. And, him playing alongside Derrick Rose is certainly not helping. And, single game plus minus is one of those things where it's not entirely clear, whose fault it is all of the time. But, you can say with strong confidence, I think, that Derrick Rose's minus 27 tonight falls largely on his own shoulders. Cavs had a 78.70 rating with him on the floor, a 130.70 rating with him off the floor, 131.6 D rating with him on the floor, and a 93.4 D rating with him off the floor. It is.
Whoa, and, that's a really good D rating without him.
He had 10 points on 12 shots. He obviously only had 1 assist again, 4 turnovers. And I feel like his line, honestly, doesn't really encapsulate just how bad he was. Whether it's driving into the paint against a double team and flinging shots at the glass, which obviously creates transition opportunities the other way. Or, Dennis Schroeder was so far off of him the entire game that when he was out there, LeBron would get the ball at the elbow and Schroeder would basically be in the paint on the opposite side, and it just makes it impossible to operate. And LeBron would swing the ball over to Rose, but no one's closing out hard on him, so either he's going to take that jumper and he's likely going to miss, or he's just going to drive right into the recovering defense. So it really puts a ton of constraints on the Cavs offense when he's out there. And so obviously sometimes he'll get to the basket and convert, but more often than not he's really causing a lot of problems with his presence on the floor.
Yeah, it was particularly disappointing because he was so good in the first half of the game on, I guess it was Friday against the Wizards. And there was, some, reasonable, it wasn't crazy to think that like maybe he could, maybe turn some sort of corner. But yeah, it just seems to me like, he brings the ball up into the forecourt, and when he decides he's going to drive, he just puts his head down, doesn't look for anything. And I think on Friday, maybe he just was lucky and made a bunch of those. And today was probably a little bit more, indicative of what can be reasonably be expected going forward. But
the thing is that he just doesn't really involve anybody else, like you say. As soon as he decides to put his head down, it's basically him or no one. And, even just the way that he plays and the way that he, the types of shots that he's taking, if he's going to take 13 shots, he basically needs to make 8 of them for that to be like a reasonable option within the offense. As soon as he gets down to 7 of 13 from the field, even though it's over 50%, because they're all twos, you're only scoring 14 points on those 13 possessions, which ends up being a 107.0 rating, and that's, probably lower than where you'd like to be as this team the entire year. So,
yeah, it's just not good enough. And he's not helping anyone else. So it's not just that like his scoring contribution is sort of mediocre. It's that he's not making anyone around him better.
That's where you see the differentiation
that combination between
him
brutal.
And Wade, where Wade is similar in the types of shots that he takes, but like we said before, he's averaging, more assists per game, more potential assists per game, significantly higher assist percentage. And so even though Wade is kind of a similar player in terms of the outputs that he's going to give you on his shots, he's involving other guys more than Derrick Rose is. And so you can kind of live with him being out there a little bit more, even though he's, obviously not going to be a go-to guy by any means.
Yeah. Would you kick the tires on Jose Calderon a little bit more?
I think that... Right. I think that
if you're losing to the Hawks, you can't do worse.
This point is that your defense can't be much worse than it already is. There has to be an upper bound to how bad it is, and you're probably pretty close to it already. Just with how many wide open shots you're giving up, the pick and roll defense, and so if you bring guys in like Fry and like Calderon that are obviously highly skewed towards the offensive end.
Liabilities.
you're not going to lose a ton on defense just because you've already been so bad. And so if you have more room on the offensive end, you just might end up having to try to outscore teams. And that just might be where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah, just one final thought on Rose. Because of the way that he drives, he often ends up sort of off balance. So if he's missing, and tonight he missed 8 times out of 12, it's creating a situation where, he's dicking around under the hoop, probably complaining for a foul. Well, the other team is sprinting back with a, easily had transition opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, there's just 3 or 4 things there that are combining to make him really sort of a big negative on the floor right now. I don't know. Look, tonight was particularly bad. Even if he tried, it would be hard to do worse.
Even in the game on Friday, it's not as if the Cavs defense was, banging down the doors or really altering the game by any significant measures. They scored 127.5 points per 100 possessions and still gave up 119.6 to the Wizards. So that's like we said before. I mean, you might just have to outscore teams 130 to 122 because the defense doesn't seem to be in a place where it's going to get much better.
Yeah, I guess that's right. It's just the way the Cavs, the path to doing well against the Warriors, and I almost feel like embarrassed talking about this right now because there's like that just seems so unlikely. But they need to have like a middle of the road defense, like 16th or something would be at least tolerable. But that just seems so. I don't know. I was hoping that Crowder would be better than he's been. I don't know what's going on there. I mean, he just seemed sort of like it just seems sort of disengaged tonight. He had, a couple plays where they were just sort of boneheaded. And he's been like basically a 0 on offense so far. Do you think, look, there is some hidden upside there. I just don't know what the Cavs need to do to unlock it.
In the Washington game. I thought that his rotations on defense were
that was his best game of the season by far.
Pretty sound across the board. He was really making up for the mistakes in the way that you would like to see from a guy with his pedigree. But it seems as if we were told that he was going to be a guy who brought effort every night and energy and the things like that. But it seems as if once you enter the Cavs culture, you become swallowed whole by the desire to take games off against teams that are quite bad. So it doesn't appear as if he's any different from anybody else on the roster. And you end up with games like tonight where he really isn't doing much defensively and he really hasn't shot the ball well enough offensively to justify playing. And so I think he ended up a minus 23 in the game, and he was also off the floor down the stretch when the Cavs made their comeback.
Yeah. I mean, look, my experience with Jay Crowder is mostly in regular season and playoff games with the Celtics and Hawks playing the Cavs. And in those games, Crowder has always seemed like a dynamo and been really frustrating and irritating. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what he was normally like in a regular season game against the Nets, but so far looks like disengaged is the key word there. But yeah, I mean, look, it's so hard to know, like, what's the cart and what's the horse here? What's the chicken and what's the egg? Like, all of the Cavs seem to be not exerting that much effort. And then, of course, that just everybody sort of plays into that. And in times when they're trying, sort of, in that second half of the Wizards game and for the fourth quarter of this game, the Cavs seem fine. I mean, they are able to, pretty dominantly outplay their opposition in stretches. But yeah, these first quarters where they constantly keep getting down 10 points. They gave up 37 points to the Atlanta frickin' Hawks today in the first quarter at home. It's just sort of inexcusable. I don't know what's going on there.
The thing is that they're 3-0 against the Celtics, Bucks, and Wizards, who you would believe to be their biggest competition.
3 best teams,
and then
maybe 3 of the 4, depending on what you think of the Raptors.
So, obviously, it is a case, at least to a degree, of playing down to the competition. But as we said in the Wizards game, it wasn't as if the defense suddenly got better. It just was LeBron James being the best player in the world for 48 minutes, or he played 43 minutes or something in the game in the entire second half. So that kind of skews that game as a data point looking forward as well, because you don't really know how much of it is just like LeBron had an unbelievable game and how much of it is something that could potentially carry forward.
Yeah, that Wizards game was interesting because the Wizards outplayed the Cavs, but then LeBron, I don't know, started playing like a man possessed. And I think I tweeted something to this effect. I mean, look, that game's almost the exception that sort of proves the rule. I mean, it required this Herculean effort from LeBron to win that game, and they're just out of sorts right now. Do you think the Cavs will consider making a coaching change?
At least not right now.
I don't think they should, but, Dan Gilbert is not known for being the most patient of gentlemen, and you can't fire all the players. And, let's say another 5 games goes by and the Cavs, go 2-3 in those games or something. Or let's say they go 1-4 or something. I just wonder if Gilbert will do something overly hasty.
Their schedule going forward is Bucks.
Yeah, I should look this up.
Rockets,
Cavs schedule.
Mavs, Knicks, Hornets are the next 5. So,
right, and those last 4 games, Rockets, Mavericks, Knicks, and Hornets.
That brings
are
you to wonder whether playing the Bucks and Rockets might actually be good for them.
I mean, and even if losing by 5 to the Bucks and the Rockets would be a big improvement over what we've seen so far. It's always strange. I remember before the Pelicans game, I speculated that Anthony Davis might miss that game, and 2 or 3 people tweeted well, that might be bad. The Cavs seem to play to their level of competition, and that line of thinking has always sort of struck me as sort of insane. You want to play the worst team you can possibly play, but geez, I mean, the Cavs just haven't. The Cavs have reliably sort of made me seem like an idiot for thinking about this season. So
obviously, the Bucks and Rockets will be 2 better looks at what's going on. I think if they end up getting blown out by both teams, then I think you start to worry a lot more than you are right now. But if they end up beating both teams or hanging with both teams, then you just kind of sit here and you think, well, it just looks like they're going to play hard against the teams that are good and play terrible against the teams that are bad. So I think that those 2 games will do a good amount in terms of giving us an idea of exactly where the Cavs stand, because playing horrible against terrible teams is one thing, and then playing good against good teams. But if you're playing horrible against everybody, I think that there's significantly more cause for concern.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is just so hard to handicap, because we all came into the season saying, okay, we're not going to care about the Cavs defense in the regular season. And yet here we are, 10 games in, and it's all anyone's talking about is just how atrocious the Cavs defense is. And we all promised ourselves we weren't going to talk about this. And yet here we are. I mean, the Cavs were atrocious in the final month of last year. And we went into the playoffs, and I remember thinking, man, I don't know if they're going to make it out of the second round. This is not looking good. And I mean, they punked us all. I think the Cavs won their first 10 playoff games last year. And they did it running away. And I mean, it's just so hard to know whether they can flip that switch again. We know there's a switch, and we know they'll get better. But the question is, how much better, and like what does this signal that we're getting right now mean? And
no, I mean the personnel is certainly
I don't have any
different.
answers, Mike.
I would argue that it's worse, and therefore but yeah, no one allows you to be concerned, because if you say you're concerned, then people yell at you. But if you say you're not concerned, then what's the point of even focusing on anything? So it's a hard place to exist.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, like, what this... Like, I know that regular season data, especially from the Cavs, is less meaningful than regular season data for basically any other team. But beyond that, I mean, I don't think it means zero. Like, it means something. But, I don't know what to make of this.
You can't deny that an increase in effort will help. It just, you don't really know how much it will help.
Yeah. Yeah, these are complicated systems. It's really hard to tell. I mean, I think I can confidently say right now that, they haven't shown anything that implies an improvement over last year's team. And they need to improve over last year's team to have a puncher's chance. But do you want to talk about the 3-point shooting data?
We can,
you collated and... So I told you before we started recording, I didn't do my homework here, so I haven't looked at it. But my understanding is... Why don't you talk about it instead of me saying what I think you did?
From the NBA.com stats webpage, all of the data that they had for 3-point shooting based on defender distance, and 2 to 4 feet, 4 to 6 feet, and then 6+ feet away. 0 to 2 feet, there just really aren't enough data points to draw any conclusions. And then...
So does that mean that not many threes are taken with defenders that close?
I believe it's done by hand, as far as I know. So I think that 0 to 2 feet is basically just for like the absolutely most contested, hand in the face type shots. Not necessarily like the natural contest. I feel like those probably fall into the 2 to 4 feet category. So I took all of that and I grouped them by player. And then I think it goes back to 2013-14. So there are four years of data, grouped them by player, and then sorted every player into percentiles, based on the 3 different distances.
So my first question is there a material difference in make rate? I mean,
even if you look at the guys
distance?
who are the best shooters, where, if you're looking at the guys who are the middle ground, you can definitely see a difference. But even if you're looking at a guy like Kyle Korver, 2 to 4 feet, he's around 40%. 4 to 6 feet, he's around 47%, and then 6+ feet, he's right around 50%. So even for a guy who's one of the best shooters on the planet, you're still seeing a noticeable difference based on how close the defender is. And then if you're looking at the 50th percentile for all 3 of those things, you're going to end up seeing an even wider gap based on where the defenders are. So I think both of those things are true, both for kind of the average and even for your best shooters. So when you're...
Yeah. So let me just make sure I'm reading this right. So the 50th percentile shooter looks to shoot. So with defender distance of 6+ feet looks like around 38.5%. 50th percentile for defender distance of 4 to 6 feet is like 34.8%. And let's see here, 50th percentile. It's like 31%. Yeah. So this. I mean, this makes sense. The closer the defender is, the worse people shoot. But it's comforting that the data bears that out. My concern was, so I know that Synergy tracks the data at higher resolution than this. So I think they basically have XY coordinates for defenders and shooters on the court. That data is not available even if you pay for Synergy. They do sell like an advanced, expensive product that they sell to NBA teams. My concern was that this would not be enough resolution to actually get meaningful results from.
Yeah, there's
based
definitely
on
something
this,
here.
It looks like this is plenty of resolution to get meaningful results
you can
from.
kind of see who's affected or who's not affected by defender distance the most, which I thought was an interesting exercise. And then, if you...
Were there any
it was kind of
standouts
hard
there?
For me to decide whether or not to do it by percentile or actual shooting percentage. And so I think that the data is different on both, depending on how you do it. Like if you look at Korver, going back to him, in terms of percentile, there's essentially no difference. He's in the 100th percentile for 2 to 4 feet, 100th percentile for 4 to 6 feet, and then 99th percentile for 6+ feet. But if you look at the actual percentage,
so he's a good shooter.
Or difference. There's obviously like a 9 to 10% difference between the 2 to 4 feet and the 6+ feet for him. So I think that the percentile is actually probably a better way to do it. Like if you look at Steph Curry, It's basically the same. He's 97, 99, 95. So if you're acknowledging that the defenders are changing something, then when you're looking at the guys who are the best shooters, it's likely that they're going to be in the highest percentile based on the distance across the board. Yeah.
Across the board. Yeah, I'd be curious if height plays an impact here. Like, I wonder if guys who are taller are less affected by defender distance.
Yeah, if you did it
that would be
way,
just like a
like
a baseline theory.
Say like Marcus
that would
Smart,
be interesting to look
he's
at.
28.8% with 2 to 4 feet, 29.3% 4 to 6 feet, and then 29.6% 6+ feet. So basically, he's terrible no matter what. But his, the defenders aren't really impacting how he shoots the ball. He's basically a 29% shooter no matter what. So that would be the other way to look at it.
Yeah. Right, he sucks no matter what. Yeah, I should look at this. I wonder if Isaiah Thomas, because he's like basically the shortest dude. So all right, so Isaiah Thomas is 67th percentile, 2 to 4. He is 74th percentile, 4 to 6. And yeah, so, that basically, look, I'm sort of hunting for things that I think would make sense, but that totally makes sense. It makes sense that like if people are in his zip code, they're able to affect him disproportionately more than other players are affected because he's so short. So yeah, he's basically one of the best shooters in the NBA if the defenders are far away. But if there's a defender anywhere close to him, he sort of falls off to being
the most, or
that's
if not the most, then one of the most shots with defenders from 2 to 4 feet as well. I think he's at like 700 and something, and the only other guy over 700 I think are like Harden and Curry. So he's I think
look at that. That's sort of odd. Maybe is he being forced to like late possessions,
I think a lot of it came last
year. Does he have
year.
Bad shot selection?
Harden's at 880, for instance. I think he's number 1. So Harden's shot quality is probably one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult in the entire NBA. And so, if you take James Harden shots and you gave them to another player, they'd probably shoot worse from 3. Whereas if you gave James Harden Kyle Korver shots, you could probably reasonably expect him to shoot pretty well from 3. And so I think that that's also an interesting exercise that can be done.
Yeah, it would be interesting to come up with, because some shooters are shooting a high percentage, but it's, like someone like Otto Porter comes to mind here. Like, he's not creating off the dribble. He's not taking late shot clock possessions. He's mostly standing in the corner and taking wide open shots. Maybe that's not true. That's my impression of Otto Porter's game. But take a hypothetical player that's doing something like that. If somebody like that is shooting 43%, it's less impressive than, say, Steph Curry. If you're going to look at guys
who are taking almost all of their shots. Anderson's only taken one shot all year from 3 with a defender from 2 to 4 feet, 27 with a defender from 4 to 6, and 46 with a defender from 6+. And so, he's a guy who's essentially just catch and shoot, and he's only going to take open shots. So you'd expect him to be pretty high. I actually did this where I took the data for everybody who's attempted at least 35 threes already this year, and then plugged in their, the defender distances on all of their threes. Okay. So, and then basically multiplied the defender, how many shots they've taken from each distance times their career percentage with a defender from that distance to try to get their expected 3-point percentage. And then compare it to their actual 3-point percentage so far this year. And so, for instance, Ryan Anderson, with that exercise, his expected 3-point percentage so far this year was actually 45%. And then his actual 3-point percentage so far this year was only 37.3. So he's actually shooting much worse than you would expect based on the quality of his looks. Right, for sure. Yeah. I just kind of wanted to do it just to see what it would look
that'll
like.
Be more interesting as more time goes by and the sample size.
Like, for instance, Kyle Korver, his expected percentage was actually 57.4, and his actual percentage was, quote-unquote, only 41%. So he was actually near the bottom of the list.
What a bum. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Look, this data, this kind of data, I think may be the next sort of wave of advanced analytics in the NBA, because I think it will be possible to identify people because people now just largely look at the raw shooting percentages and make judgments based on those players. But I think with this kind of data, you'll be able to look at players and see there'll be certain players that are basically taking much more difficult threes and shooting them at a good rate, which implies that there's, some talent there that goes beyond what their raw percentage is. And I wonder if teams are probably doing this already.
I mean, my thought too in doing that exercise,
at least for
especially
the
as we
fans
go further
analytics,
into the year, is that
could be some interesting developments.
It'll be easier to tell who's improving in terms of their actual 3-point percentage versus who is, maybe getting better or worse shots. So, if you end up and you say your expected 3-point percentage based on your career is, 35 based on the defender distances and you're shooting 42, then we can say probably fairly confidently that you've actually improved. Whereas, if your looks are just way better, your expected percentage and your actual percentage might be pretty close to each other, even though your actual percentage might be a career high.
Right. Yeah. Like if you suddenly find yourself in a situation where, you're always on the court with, 3 guys that the defense really has to worry about.
Right. So I think
and you're just camping out in the corner, getting wide open corner threes. Shooting a high percentage in that circumstance is less impressive.
Obviously, he shot the ball really well from 3, but he got better looks than he's ever gotten. So that's kind of why, that can better explain his jump in percentage than just saying, he's shooting the ball better. Yeah, I pinned the tweet to my profile. Yeah. You can click on it.
Is this spreadsheet publicly available, Mike?
Mess around with it there, and then, as I said, this expected thing, I'm just going to try to calculate every so often, just to kind of see where people are and see if there's anything interesting being borne out from it.
Yeah, and you could do this beyond 3-point shooting as well, because there could be some interesting
Yeah,
I don't know. So can you? It's easiest for
distance,
threes because that
data
basically pins it to a certain
for
distance
than twos. That would just be my guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, things start getting pretty crowded, and what to count as a defender is a little bit tricky. I'd be curious how the data. I think it's synergy data, but yeah, I mean, maybe they just have a human who's filing it into one of those buckets, or maybe they have a human who's putting XY coordinates, and then it gets distilled down into the lower resolution for public consumption.
Nope. Just that. Yeah. I think it's fairly interesting to kind of mess around with.
I don't know either.
I said, hopefully
did you want to say anything else about this?
In terms of better determining whether or not guys are actually showing improvement, or just that the quality of their looks have changed, kind of as we get deeper into the season. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so you can find that at mzavagno 11. That's ZAVAGNO 11. Mike, why do you have 11 there?
Yeah, it was my dad's number. I took it from him, so I just threw the 11 on there when I made my Twitter. I don't even know when it was, a while ago. I think when I was in like high school or something. So it's just always been that way.
Yeah. Man, Twitter existed when you were in high school. That is deeply upsetting. Okay, well, do you have? I'm about to wrap it up here, but do you have any predictions for the next 5 games? So they have the Bucks. The Bucks on. I think they're at home against the Bucks, so they'll actually probably get to practice tomorrow.
I mean, we'll see.
It'll be interesting to see the quotes that come out of that practice. Probably more lip service about how they're going to try harder. I thought it was weird the way that they said he was sick. He didn't look sick. He just looked bad.
Oh, I don't know.
I presume. Let's say that the prediction is a push if Kevin Love for some reason isn't playing.
Brace for loss.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a coin flip would be, or a monkey throwing darts at a board would be just as viable a way. I think the Cavs are. Yeah.
Be ugly.
Let's see. I think they'll beat the Knicks. Guys, I have no idea. I think the Cavs are going to go 2-3, which is not a bold prediction, but I think that's what they're going to do. And then the schedule doesn't really. I mean, the Cavs have gone through their easiest schedule. At least I've seen a few people tweet this. Their schedule, these first 10 games are the easiest 10 in terms of strength of schedule. Yeah. Shin Young produces good content, but I don't know. I like Shane and Danny. Those guys make great content, but they're a little bit anti-Cavs sometimes, and they try to be unbiased, but sometimes they can't help it. And I don't know. I'm a little oversensitive, I guess, but it bothers me a little.
Well, Dwayne Wade just said, I want one time for the first unit to get on the second unit because we blew a lead. I'm waiting for that to happen. So it sounds like everything's great.
Anyway.
Yep.
Wait, Wade said that? Oh, boy.
He's not wrong.
That's not great. Well, I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, that's not typically, people don't typically get on the starters like that, but yeah, maybe a little salt is what they need. Yeah, maybe the drama is going to come from internal to the Cavs this year instead of external. Anyway, all right, I'm going to wrap this up. You got anything else, Mike? All right. Thank you for listening to Cavalytics. You can find us on Twitter. You can find Mike at mzavagno11. You can find me at CavalyticsNBA. You can email us, cavalyticsnba@gmail.com. I haven't checked that lately, but I aspire to, and if we get questions, we'll respond to them on the show. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Cavs.
Hi, it's me, that little voice inside your head. You spent all year taking care of business. Let Office Depot Office Max take care of you. There's this new HP Pavilion laptop with 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor. Save $200. Now just $449. Look at it. It's only $449 at Office Depot Office Max. Go ahead. You deserve it.
Taking care of business.
Offer ends 11/11. Limit 1.